I'm Tom LoBianco, editor, co-founder of 24 Site News, joined today by my friend Adam Klasfeld, courts reporter extraordinaire over at All Rise News, just launched, or I guess not just launched. You're a veteran now. I feel like you're
Well,
a
it's
vet.
now been 3 months. I am now firmly in the water, really enjoying the pool. This is actually, to the day, Tom, the 3-month anniversary of the launch of All Rise News. It was
Congrats, man.
April 21st that All Rise
Awesome.
came into being, and now we're here into month 3. Strong start,
Outstanding.
and I'm looking forward to everything to come.
I've been watching all your travels from New York, Tennessee. I mean, I can't think of a courtroom you have not reported from so far. And I'm just like, it feels like it's more than 3 months, the amount of traveling and reporting you've been doing. So it's been
Thank
excellent.
you. Thank you so much, Tom. I mean, it was one of my convictions in going ahead with this was that I'm going to provide court reporting on the ground, that there's so many important cases that shape our lives, shape our
Yes.
nation, and that this is going to be a means through which I can show people what's happening in these cases that
Yes.
shape our national dialogue.
Yes, man. You've been doing great. And I got it. Is there ever a week where there are not important court cases in this administration?
No, there are not. As a matter of fact, this morning, there was a closing arguments in a case that was a 9 day trial before Judge William Young, a Reagan
Hmm.
appointee. And it was a case that is asking Judge Young to block a Trump administration policy of
Hmm.
targeting student protesters. So we've seen the individual cases, the cases of Mahmoud Khalil, the case
Hmm.
of Rumeysa Ozturk and Mohsen Madawi. This is a case that tackles the entire policy writ large. And the
Wow.
government's defense to this case, that came out in oral arguments this morning, they say there's no such policy. As a matter of fact, they ridiculed it. They said this is Don Quixote,
Hmm.
that the plaintiffs are tilting at windmills that don't exist. It's not a monster, it's a windmill. And the judge came back to him with a point saying, matched his literary reference and said, Henry II, who will rid me of this troublesome priest? That whether or not there's a policy, whether or not there's any policy on the books to target student protesters, uh,
Hmm.
that it doesn't matter. That it's if the king goes and says, "Let me rid me of this meddlesome priest," then that is, So that was the judge's rejoinder. A little bit of a man of all seasons, Thomas Beckett. So sometimes the judges presiding over
Hmm.
these cases have an eye on the eternities. I'll say one
Yeah.
more thing about that case. This trial ended this morning without a ruling. Judge Young's rulings have been quite blistering.
Hmm.
I would look out for his decision in this case because he has had a way. There was a ruling in another high-profile Trump administration case
Hmm.
involving Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and HHS. And he said that the agency under Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s leadership was responsible for that he had not seen government racial discrimination in the targeting of these DEI grants, had never
Oh,
seen anything like it in his 4-decade career on the bench.
yeah.
And it's an
Yeah.
incredible remark to say about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the
Yeah.
son of the civil rights icon, is behind what this Reagan appointed judge deemed the worst act of government racial discrimination that he had seen in decades on the bench.
I mean, they've said it repeatedly, and one of the things I really enjoy, I get your Sunday roundup. I was reading it yesterday before we started today, and I think is very helpful for all of us in the independent journalism space in this atmosphere, in this world, is the constant re-upping that as we would say in reporting the nut graft. That
Right.
these are all things that have happened. It's easy to get lost in the uh, you know bomb Iran, to the horror of the Texas floods, the military frame. Right, pick one major event, and there's a new one each week, and it's almost easy to forget the flurry of executive actions, whether they stand or not, that the president himself took, targeting what they call DEI, which is,
Right.
as noted here, so hugely helpful. Guys, if you don't already, you can subscribe to 24 Site News. I believe up the top of your thing. Make sure to subscribe to Adam Klasfeld at All Rise News. He does incredible court reporting. He is on the ground for all of us. So, I was reading about the this prisoner swap with Venezuela, and some of the high profile people who were, for lack of a better term, and this is not to equate anything with Pinochet, because this is not Pinochet in Chile, but these were migrants who were disappeared. All right.
Mhm.
Now, what happened when they were disappeared is a different question. And they let go. They, in the swap with Venezuela, they let go the barber Andre, the barber, who a lot of people were talking about. And this reminded me of your recent reporting on Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
Yes.
What's the latest in his case?
The latest in his case is just this morning. His attorneys sent a letter to the judge over in the Middle District of Tennessee in Nashville saying that if he rules, and he can rule imminently, to affirm his pretrial release, Kilmar Abrego Garcia's
Mm,
pretrial release, pause that release for 30 days so that the government doesn't take him into immigration custody and try to deport him again. Now, this case has been paused on this limbo for a little more than a month now. Before I was in Nashville last week to cover this case,
mm.
and a kind of a point of his legal historical trivia. We are now marking the 100th anniversary of the Scopes trial. Um, and that was,
Very
for
fitting.
yeah, no, and it was last week as well. The Scopes trial lasted, I forget exactly how many days, but it was the 100th anniversary last week and the 100th anniversary today. And that
Mm,
is the famous case about the teaching of evolution, breaking Tennessee law, big deal in Tennessee. So it to kind of tie the two together, don't take anything on faith. And so what we had happen in the Middle District of Tennessee last week was the lead investigator of the Kilmar Abrego Garcia case
mm,
got up on the witness stand and was questioned by a lead attorney for one of the lead attorneys for Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a man by the name of Sean Hecker, whose law
mm.
firm had secured the $88 million judgments in favor of E. Jean Carroll against Donald Trump. And
Oh,
Sean
wow.
Hecker, though he didn't personally represent E. Jean Carroll, he is a named partner at that firm. He took a turn at questioning the lead investigator and kind of exposed how little the investigator checked what his main cooperators were saying. I'll give you an
Mm,
example. On the witness stand, it came out that the main cooperating witness, Jose Hernandez Reyes,
mm,
is a man who's convicted of felonies twice, deported 5 times, and spoke to the lead case agent's colleagues about 3 times before the lead agent, Peter Joseph, had
mm.
a turn interviewing him. And Abrego's attorney asked, did you consult the notes of those interviews? No, I wanted to go in fresh. Did you read the notes after your interview? No. Now, why this is important, we have a case that's predicated largely on the testimony of Mr. Hernandez Reyes. and Mr. Reyes's close relative, an unnamed cooperator, who also is a convicted felon who's turning state's witness, getting all of these favors for the government, that he's from the government, excuse me, that both of them are on deferred deportation in order to turn state's witness on Kilmar Abrego
Right.
Garcia.
Right.
And it what what emerged from the last hearing last week, at least the hearing that I saw, was that it was too good to check what the witnesses were saying. The lead investigator did not consult the notes of 3 prior interviews with people at Homeland Security investigations. So what we're finding out right now is we're waiting to see whether the judge will affirm his magistrate's ruling that the government did not legally justify the pretrial detention of
Mm,
Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Um, if the judge affirms that ruling, then we're stuck in square one. We don't know that whether the
mm.
moment that Kilmar Abrego Garcia is released again, whether he'll be in immigration custody, as the government promised. There are parallel proceedings going on in Maryland to find out whether a judge there, a federal judge there, has the power to protect Kilmar Abrego Garcia from getting whisked out of the country, whether she can interfere with with ICE's ability to pick him up and transfer him out of the country again.
Wow. Also, would note there's a logistical question behind that, which is, as we know from this administration, even if a court order is in place, doesn't mean it'll necessarily be followed.
Right. Well, there's that breaking Washington Post investigation today saying that
Yes.
1/3 of
Incredible.
court orders. And, I've been sitting through a number of these hearings, as you pointed out, and it's remarkable that the only time the government strategy throughout all of this, with the exception of a handful of cases where they employed the Emil Bovey strategy that, the fuck you to the courts, as it were. Um, Most of the time, the government has gone into court and said, we're complying with your honor's order. They have been trying to persuade the judges, but due to the dogged data journalism and reporting of the Washington Post,
Yes.
we know that in at least a third of the cases, they stand accused of violating the court orders. And that's an enormous number. I've been covering the courts for nearly 2 decades. It's
Yeah.
not the way that these things usually work. As
Well,
they say, it is not normal.
yeah. And, and some of the way they've handled those things, just too cute by a half.
Right.
When they sent I think it was that first plane down to El Salvador, I think it was an emergency injunction was ordered, and and they're like, too late. The
Right.
plane's already outside national boundaries.
Right. And now we know, because of the Emil Bovey confirmation process, the backstory of that. We know
Mm,
that FU that was related by the whistleblower, Erez Ruveni, was that we know we've seen the emails and we've seen the text messages that related to that case in
mm,
particular, the flights to El Salvador. And we see references in the text messages, and just it's been widely reported, but just something to turn back to why this Kilmar Abrego Garcia case is important, why I've
yeah.
been to Nashville 3 times to cover this story. um Erez Ruveni was a Justice Department lawyer on the civil case of bringing Kilmar Abrego Garcia back home. He's seen it. Before he turned to whistleblower, he was the one who
Yeah.
was fired for admitting that Kilmar Abrego Garcia was sent out of the country in error. And so the government has brought its allegations against Kilmar Abrego Garcia. They're going to have to be tested in a court of law.
Yeah.
As widely reported, the criminal division director of the Middle District of Tennessee quit his job, resigned on the day of Kilmar Abrego Garcia's indictment.
Mhm.
That man, Ben Schaefer, his former deputy, is now a lead attorney for Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
Yeah.
There are all sorts of red flags all over this
Yeah.
case. And right now, we just recently had a trial date set for January of next year that for where the government can test its allegations, put it before a jury, let the jury decide. And
Yeah.
now, what are we talking about? Whether he'll be whisked out of the country again through some other manner. Do they try to overcome or ignore the court order that had originally prevented his
Yeah.
deportation to El Salvador, or do they try to send him to South Sudan or
Yeah.
to Honduras or any other third
Yeah.
party country thinking, oh, well, we got the green light from SCOTUS. That's why,
Yeah.
since launching All Rise News, I've decided to cover this case so closely and to be on the ground, both in Maryland when it occasionally goes there and to Nashville, Tennessee, because this is a case where we're really testing the faith in the government's word. To go back to the
Yes.
100th
To say
anniversary of
the least.
the Scopes
Yes.
trial, and we're trying to find out w- what is the state of due process in the United States.
Yeah.
When the government levels serious allegations against a person, do they have to back it up?
Yeah. Guys, if you're just joining us, I'm Tom LoBianco, editor, co-founder of 24 Site News, joined by Adam Klasfeld, longtime courts reporter, old colleague, good friend, and now the editor. 3 months in, feels like it's been longer because the incredible amount of work he's been doing at All Rise News. Help us out, all right? Hit that little heart button down there at the bottom. That helps juice the algorithm, and it helps us fight these fucking bullshit bots, all right? These fake shits. Sorry, I'm cursing, but whatever. We're on the app. Fuck it. All right. That helps us fight these little fucks. All right. With real news. Okay. All right. um, I wanted to ask you something because you spent I mean, you've seen the Trump legal team in action, and you spent all last year covering the civil and the criminal trials of him. And you're very familiar with courtroom procedure, tactics, maneuvers, right? So beyond just the actual the statute, and we are still, thank God, a country that is governed by the rule of law. Whether or not people always adhere to that is a different question. um, I wanted to ask you in this context about something that is crosses the line between real courtroom action, all right, real cases, real criminality, and the conspiracy theory world, which is Jeffrey Epstein. And I wanted to get your sense of what does it really mean, for instance, when the president's like, "Oh, we're going to ask a court to release these files." I mean, what's the process of this? You're an incredible legal expert. So, like, how does this like
Thank you.
how's that work?
So, I've been covering the case of Jeffrey Epstein for a long time. I was in federal court when he was indicted. I remember the first press conference with Jeffrey Berman. I had asked
Mm,
him a question that was on a lot of people's minds: is Jeffrey Epstein a billionaire? The response to that was no comment. And I covered all of Ghislaine Maxwell's every day of her criminal trial.
wow.
Um, I will say that what will happen is most likely there will be a hearing soon in a motion that the government has already filed, that specifically Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche have filed in the Southern District of New York, about 15 blocks south of where I live. And that will eventually, presumably, go to a hearing, and a
Mm,
judge will decide, wait a minute, you're asking me to disseminate grand jury minutes. Now, just to kind of set the stage for what
mm,
this means, one, grand jury minutes are not when people talk about the Epstein files, it's a pretty amorphous phrase. It refers to all the files that
yes.
might be in the government's possession or be in court documents in civil cases, criminal cases. But when people talk about the Epstein files, grand jury minutes aren't the big thing. I'll
Mm.
give you an example in a footnote of the request to unseal these grand jury minutes, which I have to reiterate were signed by the two top people at the Justice Department and none of the line prosecutors. So we don't know whether the people who actually put Ghislaine Maxwell in
Interesting.
prison are we don't know whether they're on board with it.
Wow.
We will find out. I'm not making representations one way or
Yeah.
another. But
Right.
one thing just to give a kind of idea about this, Ghislaine Maxwell's case is now she has petitioned the Supreme Court for cert. She wants her convictions heard. And now we have the top echelons of the DOJ asking to unseal not only the Epstein grand jury investigation, but
Mm.
her grand jury investigation, which, if the Supreme Court agrees with her, could interfere with the ability to prosecute her again.
Ah, ah.
So, just today, it was clarified that the judge presiding over the case for the grand jury minutes is Judge Paul Engelmeyer. The reason for that is the judge who presided over Maxwell's case got a promotion. She's now part of the Second Circuit. I really think, to your question, Tom,
Mm.
the about conspiracy theories, w- separating that from
Yeah.
the real and horrible story of
Yes.
the serial sexual
Yes.
abuse that has occurred.
Yes.
That goes to my conviction about the importance of court reporting and being on the ground. We will find out very soon what will happen in the court with these requests, the protections that usually govern grand jury minutes. I
Yeah.
imagine that a judge can vigorously question perhaps Todd Blanche. I mean, who knows? You don't usually see the deputy attorney general taking the Amtrak up to New York to argue in court. Usually you delegate some of this, but very often in the Trump administration, and it's kind of a tell, you have
Mm.
the top echelons of the Department of Justice arguing things that a line prosecutor would. As a matter of fact, I'll go
Mm.
back to Kilmar Abrego Garcia. That
Yeah.
case is being argued by the acting U.S. attorney for the Middle District of Tennessee. I spoke to local
Mm-hmm.
reporters there. It's as strange there as it is here. It seems
Mm.
that one trend with the Trump Justice Department is that all of the high profile matters are entrusted with the political leadership.
Yes.
And that is a tell right there. It's a step away from this kind of um, coolly professional, that
Yeah.
apolitical, disinterested
Yeah.
line prosecutors who are going to inspect the evidence and who are going to question their own witnesses in order to test their own credibility. We're in a different era,
Yeah.
and so part of the part of the importance of live court reporting in the Epstein case, because of the conspiracy theories, if a judge declines to release these grand jury minutes, you can see
Mm.
it happening now. I mean, Judge Engelmeyer happens to be an Obama appointee. He might decide, wait a minute, you're asking me to throw these grand jury minutes of the Maxwell case into the ether when she has a petition before the Supreme Court? Denied. If that happens, is it because he's a Clinton appointee or because that he's following law and precedent and protecting a case whose book hasn't been definitively closed?
Yeah.
And it's that kind of detailed reporting from the courts, from the people who understand how the courts typically operate, that helps separate the very real need for more transparency in the
Yeah.
Epstein saga
It's very,
from
yeah. No, I mean, it's very, Rick Wilson years ago wrote that book and coined the phrase, everything Trump touches dies. And I'm looking down here. Kathy Wilson had to go. Hey, Kathy, we saw you. Thanks for hanging out with us. Cecile Q, I'm reading what you said here. That's amen. The staff, the professional staff, people who've made careers out of this, who are serious about government service, who are not the political appointees. I think, we see this because, we cover government and politics, but a lot of the regular world, of everyday folks, or whatever, they don't always see this, right? They don't know the difference between that. They're the ones who are going to have their careers wrecked if they go along with it because they're not, they're not Todd Blanche. They're not Emil Bove. They're not going to, because they're the grunts. All right. The people that traditionally have kept our justice system working for, for justice, rule of law.
Right.
Uh,
I
so,
mean, look, before we can go back to the case of Eric Adams, one of the most
yeah.
remarkable things, and just early on in the administration, I thought that maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me. I was looking at the Eric Adams case in court, and who's sitting alone at the uh, government's table? Emil Bovey. What is he doing all by himself trying to dismiss the case? Well, it happened right before this mass exodus from the
yeah.
Southern District of New York prosecutors and public
Yeah.
corruption unit prosecutors over in D.C. There are certain things that the apolitical professionals just won't go along
Yeah.
with. Will
Yeah.
the Southern District join this effort to unseal certain grand jury
Yeah.
minutes? The answer to that question will say volumes about the
Yeah.
legitimacy or the distraction of this gambit.
Yeah. We're gonna have to wrap it up here soon in a few minutes, guys. And want to give you a quick little update. So tomorrow over on Substack Live 24 site, if you don't subscribe already, please make sure you do. There should be a little subscribe button at the top of your screen somewhere. And do make sure to subscribe to All Rise News by Adam Klasfeld. Tomorrow, we're going to have on Isaac Arnsdorf for the Washington Post with his recently published very good book, recapping how we got here, which is 2024. It's named 2024, written by three great reporters, Isaac Arnsdorf, Tyler Pager, and Josh Dawsey, who's a legend on the Trump feed. And then on Wednesday, we're going to have on Tara Palmieri, did an incredible podcast on Epstein, traveling the country with Virginia Roberts Dupre. And I think this is very important. We're going to talk about what the victims go through. So much has been focused at the top. Sometimes it's easy to forget that they're humans. They get sucked into the grinder of all this crap. Pardon my French, but it's terrible. All right. So we're going to be talking about that on Wednesday. Adam, what do you got coming up, man? What are you watching this week? What should we be paying attention to?
Well, I'm watching out for a ruling in that case that I mentioned earlier in our conversation about whether he will block the Trump administration, whether a judge will block the Trump administration from targeting students for deportation based on their political beliefs. I'm also
Mm,
looking out for whether this Epstein grand jury matter goes to a hearing. There was a return date on the government's motion for this Friday. Will that be a return date for a hearing in court? I have inquiries up with the court and with the U.S. Attorney's Office. I'll let folks know
mm.
if I hear word on that. I'm also looking out for the rulings in the Kilmar Abrego Garcia case. The judge said
Wow.
last week that he would not have a ruling out before Friday of last week, suggesting that we can be learning some updates pretty
Mm,
soon. So these
mm.
are all high profile matters
Wow.
that could be coming to a head this week. And of course, any sort of developments to the Epstein case, because this is a scandal that is not going away. And if it comes to a head in Manhattan federal court in particular, I will be there on Friday reporting live from the courtroom.
Beautiful. Guys, make sure you go to All Rise News, sign up, find it here on Substack. Adam Klasfeld is an amazing courts reporter and part of this vanguard of independent journalists holding the country up right now. We got everybody. We're doing this. All right. Look, fucking sucks right now. It's fucking crazy. I don't mind saying that. All right. But we've been through some crazy shit before and we're doing it together. All right. We'll make it out the other end. All right. Thanks, guys. Klasfeld, thanks,
Thank
brother.
you. Always a pleasure, Tom.
Always, baby. All right, guys. We'll see you. Cheers.